Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues and students. We'll begin the interview portion of our program. Our first interviewer is Dr. Gauri Shankar Datta. Gauri Shankar is a professor of statistics at the University of Georgia and a part-time mathematical statistician at the US Census. As you know, he was a former student of Professor Ghosh, and he got many awards. To just name a few, is the fellowship from Institute of Mathematical Statistics, American Statistical Association, and membership of International Statistical Institute. Our second interviewer is Dr. Partha Lahiri, director of the Joint Program in Survey Methodology and professor of mathematics from the University of Maryland. He also received multiple awards, both fellow of IMS and ASA, and elected member of Institute of Statistical International ISA, International Statistical Association, and then they are all established researcher in our field and very much contribution in our field. And without any further delay, I will request Professor Ghosh to come here in the podium, and then our interviews will start. Thank you.
Malayda, I think many students and others in the field would be interested in learning about your intellectual upbringing.
My family valued education, and I was given every single opportunity to pursue my career in the direction that I wanted. My father was a lawyer, but he did never press me to pursue the law profession. My grandfather was my constant companion since my childhood. He directed in many ways and guided me in many ways, but never interfered with my choice of profession.
Malayda, you have been an active researcher for almost 6 decades. We'd like to start with your research, your scientific body of knowledge.
I have been around for the field for a long time, and that possibly gave me the opportunity to explore many different areas of statistics. Yes, I worked with nonparametric inference, sequential analysis, decision theory, reliability theory, Bayes and empirical Bayes estimation, small area estimation, as you notice, case control studies, and more recently, I have been involved in high dimensional inference using techniques from machine learning, neural nets, and others.
Yes, you have contributed so much to so many areas. Let me single out Bayesian and empirical Bayesian analysis. You are an authority in this research area. What is your reflection on that line of research? Do you consider it finished, or is there a lot more that you think needs to be done in that area?
Partha, I do not consider myself to be an authority in either Bayesian or empirical Bayesian analysis, or not for that matter in any area of statistics, believe me. I love statistics. Try to work on topics that interest me. The subject has grown so much in these days that I realize I have touched upon only a minuscule fraction of it. There is more to learn, a lot more than what I have learned in all these years. Regarding the answer to a specific question, Bayesian or empirical Bayes analysis will survive a long time. That is more so because of the emergence of high-dimensional data. The Bayesian approach is quite natural in handling such problems. They're readily implementable, provide natural uncertainty measures such as posterior variances or credible sets.
Yeah, that is very good, Malaida. Could you please tell us about some important applications of the Bayes and empirical Bayes inference?
There are many, but I will give only one in this case based on my own research on small area estimation. The need is felt all the more these days, not just by federal agencies, but also by local governments, as well as private sectors. Now, what is small area? It could be local areas, such as counties, census tracts, etc. Also can mean small domains, cross-classified by age, sex, ethnicity, etc. The reason why it is important is that the original survey was targeted to achieve accuracy at a higher level of aggregation than the so-called small areas. Due to lack of resources, the same set of data has to be utilized at lower levels of geography, and it is not adequate to yield the desired precision. That makes it near imperative to borrow strength from similar areas and related covariates by using some suitable models. A second cousin of small area estimation, I hijacked the terminology from Joseph Dransk, is disease mapping, where similar techniques can be used.
Let me follow up on this. Due to high non-response in surveys based on probability sample design and other issues such as small area estimation that you mentioned, there is a push for replacing probability sampling by various kinds of non-probability sampling and big data. What's your take on that?
Partha, this is a very, very valid point. Classical sample surveys based on data collected by field investigators is getting more and more obsolete, as do telephone surveys. For example, you may live in Florida and you have the cell number of something from either St. Louis or whatever, San Francisco or whatnot. So online surveys are an option, but that possibly will not help much in reducing non-response in a significant way. Clearly, we need to have increasing dependence on administrative data. This is a huge data source, and big data will only get bigger. What seems inevitable is that the end result will be greater reliance on model-based, or at least design-assisted model-based, or model-assisted design-based inference of survey data.
When you got to the federal agencies, was your survey sampling and small area research inculcated? Did that change while you were there?
My small area research started in the mid-80s when I was working with Glenn Meaden and you too, Partha and Gauri, both of you. That was mostly theoretical. However, when in 1990 I visited for the first time the United States Bureau of the Census and the Bureau of Labor Statistics, I could see a whole list of potential applications. The hierarchical and empirical Bayesian methodology that we are using did not change, but I was delighted to find their use in solving real-life problems.
Could you please give us some examples of your small area work at various federal agencies?
Yes, my experience with the federal agencies has always been a very, very pleasant one. I had the opportunity to work with the people in the US Census Bureau, Bureau of Labor Statistics, National Center for Health Statistics, and National Agricultural Statistics Service. My collaboration on census and undercount with Kerry Isaki, median income estimation with Bob Fay, benchmarking with Bill Bell and Jerry Maples, small domain estimation of the proportion without health insurance in the Asian subpopulation with Myron Katzoff, cash rent estimation with Emily Burge and Andrea Ursulescu have all led to many new findings of practical relevance.
Malayda, your work in small area estimation, both in theory and applications, is very influential. What do you think about the future direction of small area estimation?
To which my immediate response will be, que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. The future is not for us to see, que sera, sera. On a more serious note, as I see it now, small area estimation techniques should embrace new ideas emerging from machine learning, deep learning, neural nets, all under the big banner of artificial intelligence. That will help SAE flow more easily in the mainstream of statistics.
Malayda, small area estimation, when I explain to general statistical audience, I say that it is essentially a substantial modification of James-Stein estimation procedure. You have also done substantial work in both small area estimation and sequential estimation. In fact, you have a monograph on empirical Bayesian finite population sampling and a book on small area estimation here with Nitishda and your advisors. So I'm wondering, could you please say something about James-Stein estimation phenomenon in sequential estimation?
I knew the result of James and Stein, but really got genuinely interested in Stein estimation only after Ahmed Parzian asked me to be his advisor and expressed interest working on this topic. Together, we did find out the Stein phenomenon, even in the discrete case, culminating in one of my review articles with Jin Huang and Kamo Choi in the Annals of Statistics. The two-stage extension came only after my moving to Florida, and I worked with Professor Chen on that, and a natural offshoot of that was sequential James-Stein, and it came when David Nickerson asked me to be his PhD supervisor. The research continued with another PhD student of mine, Mike Hoekstra, now a very successful person at the CDC.
I'd like to reiterate again that you have more than 60 PhD students and you have more than 125 non-PhD collaborators who are not your students. So obviously, you are a prolific collaborators. So could you please tell us something about your collaborations?
I'm indeed fond of all my collaborators, my students and my colleagues alike. The collaboration began with Professor P.K. Sen, my dissertation advisor. He was very much interested in those days in nonparametric statistics, while I was interested in sequential analysis. This led to our collaboration on sequential nonparametrics, culminating eventually in a book written by Professor Sen. I did also work at the same time on parametric sequential analysis with Nitish Mukhopadhyay, my first PhD student, as has already been told. I collaborated with them for a long time. In fact, as we mentioned, it resulted in a book on sequential estimation with both Professor Sen and Nitish. The second big thing came when I moved to Iowa State and developed very quickly a friendship with Glenn Meaden, actually a very good scholar, but also a true gentleman. He was interested in those days in decision theory, while at the Indian Statistical Institute in the early 70s, I did a little bit of work in that area. But with my association with Glenn, this became the area of primary interest for a long period of time. There are several admissibility papers, many related to finite population sampling, and this eventually led to Glenn's discovery of pollia posteriors, who also found its close connection with the Bayesian bootstrap. And next it was John Rao, who encouraged me to step into small area estimation. We have collaborated only on one review article, but his advice and friendship has lasted for more than 3 decades. Another chancy event came when my revered colleague Alan Agresti once asked me about the potential Bayesian analysis of match paired data. I worked with actually Ming-Hui Chen and my student Malay Ghosh at that time, but very quickly I could see the connection with case control problems. Fortunately, at that time, Brahman Mukherjee joined our department. To let you know, again 2 days ago, I had a very pleasant information, unlike the demise of Dalo. Brahman was inducted in the National Academy of Medicine. Brahman wrote her PhD dissertation on optimal designs, but was eager to move into some new areas of research. We had a long, fruitful collaboration, and she soon became an expert on gene-environment interaction, a natural offshoot of our joint case control research. I can think of a host of other collaborators. Dalo Kim, one of my long-standing collaborators, the Sinha brothers, Bimal and Bikash, Yogesh Babu, Dipak, they, Rahul Mukherjee, and many, many others who have helped shape my research career.
As Gauri mentioned, you have supervised a high number of doctoral students. How has been your experience with them?
I have also been very fortunate in having several outstanding PhD students, including the 2 of you in my early academic career. I have collaborated with most of them, often beyond their doctoral dissertations, like you, Partha, Gauri, Dalo Kim, and many others. These students have helped me move into diverse areas of statistics, encountering new challenges, enjoying the reward of successful completion. Fortunately, the flow has never abated, and even today I have seen some excellent students who have been instrumental for me in delving into new areas of research. The students have also succeeded in different areas in later life, be it academics or industry or government. For example, Becca Storz has simply been outstanding in academics, as is Kanan Natarajan in the pharmaceutical industry. Currently, there are several others. Xing Tang, Xuan Kao, Ray Bai are doing outstanding work in high-dimensional Bayesian inference.
Malaida, from my long association with you, I know you have great fascination for mathematical statistics. Let us explore a few nuggets of results you gifted us. I'll ask a specific question about Wishart distribution, an important distribution in statistics. We need it for the probability distribution of sample variance confidence matrix in multivariate normal sample. The derivation of the Wishart distribution is easy in the case of independence, that identity variance covariance matrix. But derivation is quite difficult, complex when variance covariance matrix is not identity. You found a way by applying sufficient statistics idea to derive the Wishart distribution for the general case of multivariate normal. Would you please share your experience with this discovery?
This was purely an accident. I don't claim to be as original as you really think. I'll tell you why. When I started teaching at the Indian Statistical Institute, a topic that needed to be taught was to find the joint distribution of the so-called 5 statistics: the sample means, sample variances, and the sample correlation coefficient, based on random samples from a bivariate normal distribution. I don't recall even now how I stumbled into a certain edition of that famous book of Hogan Craig, who gave it as an exercise to find first the distribution of these statistics from a bivariate normal distribution with 0 means, unit variances, and 0 correlation. All these statistics are then independently distributed, and it is easy to find the individual distributions. If you now multiply the above null distribution by the likelihood ratio of samples from the general distribution and that for the null distribution, then you get the desired result very quickly. This is really a consequence of the factorization theorem. I could see the immediate application in the multivariate case and mentioned it to Professor C.R. Rao in one of his rare visits to Kolkata. He was stationed in Delhi in those days. Being a genius with super intellectual ability, he could immediately see what I was trying to convey and put this result as an exercise in the second edition of his very famous book, Linear Statistical Inference and Its Applications. The result also appears in the American Statistician in one of my joint papers with my dear friend Bimal Sinha.
I believe my next question will delight you. I believe that this independence of 5 statistics you possibly prove by applying Basus theorem. And I know you are a mastercraft of using Basus theorem. So I like to know about Basus theorem and the creator, Dr. Basu himself.
Thank you. Yes, indeed I proved the result using Basus theorem. I learned Basus theorem for the first time in my PhD inference course offered by Professor Jack Hall. I must admit that I did not realize at that time the importance of that result. It is only when I started calculating the Bayes risks of Gemstein type estimators I could realize how the calculations could be enormously simplified by an application of this theorem. I did explore the literature further when Anirban Dasgupta asked me to write an article on this topic in a Sankar memorial volume honoring Professor Basu. Regarding the person D. Basu, I hold him in my highest regard, not just as a scientist, but also as a kind-hearted human being. Dr. Basu was a statistical philosopher who used to think deeply about the foundations of statistical inference. I learnt a lot from his writings as well as from his lectures on the likelihood principle, just to name a few, ancillary statistics, partial sufficiency, and other aspects of foundational statistics. I've taught even some of this material in my advanced inference course, and the feedback from students has always been very positive.
Malada, let us now change the subject. Your early works are on sequential inference, non-parametrics, and many more topics. Clearly, those are based on classical or frequentist approach. Later, you have done a lot of work on decision theory, admissibility, minimixity, and multi-parameter estimation. But your recent interest certainly appears to be Bayesian. One can say that you have gone through a full circle to embrace the Bayesian approach. What's your take on the Bayesian approach to statistics? Is it fair to say that you have evolved as a Bayesian? If so, what are the sources that influence this change?
Partha, the switch to Bayesianism was gradual and did not happen overnight. I was just using Bayesian tools with Glenn Meaden to solve decision theory problems. In the process, while supervising Ahmed Parzian, one of the topmost, and Mahmoud Turabi told me he's regarded as the topmost statistician in Iran currently, I encountered the empirical Bayes interpretation of the Jamestown estimator as advocated very strongly in a series of articles by Ephron and Morris. It looked like empirical Bayes ideas could be used more broadly, and that resulted in my finite sampling papers with Glenn and subsequently with you, Partha. In the meanwhile, I was referred to the classical hierarchical Bayes paper by Lindley and Smith and wrote my first hierarchical Bayes paper with Meaden, which appeared in the JRSSB in 1984. I first wrote my finite population sampling HB paper with you, Partha, and subsequently a very detailed one with you, Gauri. Now, over the years, of course, this has translated into more general application of HB methods in problems beyond small area estimation, and I am indeed very, very happy about its success.
In what ways are the Bayesian and the classical approaches different?
In some ways, I see the major difference between the two lies in the interpretation of results, not just in their technicalities. The second advantage, let me say something else, Bayesian procedures are more directly amenable for providing uncertainty measures without resorting to asymptotics, as is mostly needed in frequentist methods. The second advantage of a Bayesian method as compared to its frequentist counterpart is the credible interval, which has a direct probabilistic interpretation in contrast to the confidence interval as is used by frequentists.
Malay, I indeed like the directness of the Bayesian approach. For many Bayesians, the prior distribution is as important as the likelihood. And selection of the prior is also an important issue in successful Bayesian analysis.
Correct.
Would you please make some comment about this topic? Thank you.
Yeah. Regarding your follow-up question, the choice of priors is indeed a very tricky thing. Now, in the medical field, with years of accumulated data, the choice of so-called subjective priors may be easy. But that may not be the case all the time. Yet, non-subjective or default Bayesian analysis can still be carried out in a meaningful fashion. Such priors have the added advantage of Bayes frequentist synthesis, something which I personally have cherished mainly because of pragmatic reasons. I may mention in this context reference priors, so nicely developed by Berger, Bernardo and their associates, and the probability matching priors where you and Rahul have made outstanding contributions. In fact, you have your book, quite effective in many applications. I recall collaborating with both of you in these areas. And my recent interest, the heavy-tailed default priors as used today, have the advantage of robustness to outliers as well as detecting spur signals in the midst of multiple noises.
Let us now turn our attention to statistics training. For example, what's your view on the role of mathematical statistics in today's graduate curriculum?
The term mathematical statistics, as is commonly used today, has definitely a place in statistics, even today. However, the topics that have been traditionally taught need to be revised and possibly even replaced by some of the current day topics. For instance, most of the material in the latest edition of the Lehman-Romano hypothesis testing book should be replaced by theory related to some of the modern topics. Say, for example, the lasso and its variants, multiple testing, convex optimization, and so on. In my second semester inference course, I do teach some of these new materials, replacing the classical hypothesis testing built on the Neyman-Pearson paradigm.
Should we completely abandon Neyman-Pearson test? How about likelihood ratio test?
Yeah, I still value the Neyman-Pearson lemma as an outstanding optimization tool applicable in solving many problems of statistical interest, not just for producing uniformly most powerful test. The follow-up, as done in most textbooks, such as uniformly most powerful test, uniformly most powerful invariant test, uniformly most powerful invariant test, unbiased test, etc., however, seem to be of very limited utility. The generalized likelihood ratio test is valuable. It is an omnibus hypothesis testing tool with strong limiting properties. But overemphasis on these topics, which used to be our teaching norm, is indeed questionable in the present era.
So, should we include more applied courses in our curriculum? How about the theoretical statistics courses? Does it have any place in the curriculum?
There should be more courses in statistical applications, and some should be core for both undergrad and grad students. Our department has undergone curriculum change by introducing core courses on statistical computing, applied regression analysis, applied machine learning, and other similar topics both at the undergraduate and at the graduate level. However, in my opinion, there should at least be a minimal exposure to some basic statistical theory. Say, for example, at the level of Casella and Barker. Without this minimal background in statistical theory, it seems futile to carry on any statistical research, even for very, very applied problems.
On another matter, could you please tell us about some influential statisticians whom you met in your professional career?
The two persons I would like to acknowledge most are Professors P.K. Chen and Professor J.K. Ghosh. Professor Chen was not just my dissertation advisor, he has ever since been my friend, guide, and philosopher. Professor Ghosh helped shape my career in many ways when I joined the Indian Statistical Institute as a young, inexperienced faculty. He helped broaden my view of statistics, which I have cherished ever since. I should also mention John Rao and Danny Pfefferman. As mentioned earlier, John Rao is the first one who introduced me to small area estimation. Many discussions with Danny Pfefferman have always helped me pursue the right track in this area of research. Going back to the distant past, I recall Professor H.K. Nandi, the first person who stimulated my everlasting interest in statistical inference. Also, I have benefited a lot by reading articles of Professor C.R. Rao, D.R. Cox, D. Basu, Vasily Hevding, Herbert Robbins, Charles Stein, Brad Efron, and others, too many to mention individually.
Partha, Malayda, I like to remind you, all good things come to an end. We are coming almost to the close of our conversation. So I like to ask you if you have any advice for the young statisticians. Are there any important research areas which are not getting attention?
Young statisticians of the day are smart enough to embrace topics of current interest. For example, causal inference and machine learning have made deep inroads in the present statistics community. What personally I would like to see is a bigger development of statistical models and the tools to analyze them. Such models will possibly defy the classical theory of statistical inference, demand new techniques, and I don't even know what they're going to be. But that will possibly have to be developed to go a long way in solving problems of genuine interest.
Before we finish, how do you foresee the future of our discipline?
I can give the earlier code, but I won't. All I would say is statistics needs to be more and more interdisciplinary. I'm very happy to find that the movement has started already in that direction. As we have noticed, many statistics departments have been renamed to statistics and data science, including our department, offering degrees in data science as well. We have to be careful though, so that we do not lose our identity and just become a branch of some other disciplines, especially information science areas such as computer science and electrical engineering. We have to be very, very careful.
Thank you, Malayda, for a very informative discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Malayda.
Thank you both for bearing with me for this conversation. Thank you again. Thank all the audience.
Thank you, Malayda, and thank you, Partha and Gauri Shankar. We have time for one or two quick questions to any of them.
Yes, Nitish.
I want to take you back to when you were right after your PhD.
Yes.
You went for, very briefly, to work for an industry. What was your experience like? And especially important because many of our students want to go into industry. So what was your...
Yeah, I'll tell you. Yes, very good question. First of all, in those days, when I graduated, at least in India, it was in India, most of the industries, you have to be a salesperson essentially to actually promote their sales products. Like I was in IBM, and they wanted how much I could sell, the machines in those days. Not even a computer. They had all these other machines, big machines where you do, not crank out, but do some calculations, etc. They had not got into that much with those actually computers that much. How much you can sell. Now that is a very non-satisfying thing. I hope the things have now changed in India at least, but what I've heard from a couple of my friends, actually, that that's still not the case. Actually, they're still going for, the industry still goes for profit. That is the real thing. Now, in this country, it may be a different story. I know people in industry, even government. For example, two of my students are now with FDA, and they have been given the opportunity, actually, to develop some interesting new methods methodological work, not just cranking out data and doing, say, for example, traditional logistic regression or anything else. So things may be different here in industry. India, I don't know. I hope things have changed, possibly in Pfizer. There is a student of mine, he may have opportunity, and Kanan can say more on that. Of course, here it is very different, and people are doing good work. For example, this COVID-19, the Pfizer and Moderna, the two pharmaceutical industries, they just came up with something very, very useful. So, and that is based on research. Like I can tell you, I don't know if you don't know that, they call it Bayesian, it's okay. Kanan, instead of using the straight binomial distribution for clinical trials, Kanan used the beta binomial, and that was the real success. When they try to promote the vaccines by using clinical trials. Beta binomial instead of irregular binomial. So that's research. That's useful research, very useful research. I hope some of that goes to India and other places, other developing countries, so that things may change over the years. Yes, Kanan?
I just want to actually hear your thoughts on the use of Bayesian methodology over the years, certainly actually from your career perspective. Obviously, it was enhanced due to actually the computational abilities. Actually, and I still remember in my early days, I consider myself still a dinosaur in terms of how we did actually using Fortran programs. I remember working with you to do that. Now, of course, are far more actually sophisticated actually programs.
JAGs.
So my question to you is in terms of how do you see all of this enabling actually the computational methods, computational tools that could enhance even further and bring embracing actually Bayesian methodology?
Actually, it is doing it. Believe me or not, it is doing it. We are supposed to do it. The problems are getting more and more challenging. In analyzing some of these data, this morning I was talking to some of the students here. Even MCMC is not a very suitable thing. You need something beyond that. I don't know, I don't have much exposure in it. The kind of thing which Michael Jordan and his associates are doing, like variational inference. And there are other things also. There are several other things as well. So computational tools are also actually undergoing change. MCMC is still possibly the most popular, researchers and practitioners alike, but there should be other techniques because the data is getting more and more challenging by all means, because it is not just a very simple application of Bayesian methods, which we used to do back in even after the advent of MCMC. That MCMC is a big advancement, but there is a lot more that we do not have. And they're needed. There is no choice.
Yeah, thank you again, and now I invite Professor Ming-Hui Chen and Yao and other committee members, Elizabeth is right here, to come forward to the stage.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lahiri and Dr. Datta, for your insightful questions. And now, on behalf of our sponsors and guests, we would like to thank you, Dr. Ghosh, for your inspirational remark. And in honor of your contribution to this event, we would like to present you with this flag.
Okay, maybe I can read it first. So the Department of Statistics at the University of Connecticut is pleased to honor Dr. Malay Ghosh at the 28th Distinguished Statistician Colloquium sponsored by Pfizer, ASA, UConn, dated October 19, 2022. Congratulations.
Thank you to all the committee members and our administrative assistant, Tracy, and Courtney, and Juliet, and of course all the Pfizer supported people, and they are here. We're so glad. And also like to thank to all the graduate students for their continuous help, presence, and support in doing all kinds of odd jobs. Okay? So thanks again. So it's adjourned now. Thank you.